morning, everyone. This is Julie McDonald with Microcom Technologies, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending today's webinar with MetaGeek. Today's host is Casey Cathy, and he is their Customer Experience Specialist. He will be presenting today. If anyone has any questions, please submit them in the question box, and Casey will answer them at the end of today's presentation. Casey, thank you so much for being with us today. I am finished for now. Please go ahead and take it on over.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Julie. And thanks everyone for joining today. This webinar is going to focus on spectrum analysis with MetaGeek tools. And all of these tools will be available at Microcom. So check them out. On the agenda today, I'm going to introduce myself, talk a little bit about MetaGeek. I'm going to go over some Wi-Fi fundamentals, a little bit of some education. I think it's important to understand a little bit about Wi-Fi to use our tools, especially when we're talking about RF and things like that. It can get a little complicated, but we'll just go over some basics. And then we're going to talk about our Chanalyzer plus Wi-Fi software and hardware combination. We call this the deep dive into spectrum analysis. And then we're going to go over a brand new tool here called the Wi-Fi Air, which is a lot like Chanalyzer plus Wi-Fi, except it works on your mobile device. And then we'll open up the floor for some questions. So a little bit about myself. My name is Casey, and I am the CX specialist here at MetaGeek. I have a few certifications. We call these, these are put on by a company called CWNP, Certified Wireless Network Professionals. Highly recommend checking them out and grabbing any one of these certifications. The very base certification here, the CWNA, that's a great starting point if you want to further your Wi-Fi education. And you can also catch me on Twitter at Cathy_Fi. There's a pretty huge community of Wi-Fi experts on Twitter, so I definitely recommend hopping on there to learn some more as well. A little bit about MetaGeek. We're based in Boise, Idaho. This is a picture from our downtown office. This is a little bit of an older picture. Now there's a couple buildings, a lot of development happening right now in Boise, but we still love it here. And I'll just go ahead and jump right in. So kind of the most important concept to understand about Wi-Fi is that it's half duplex. And what does that mean exactly? It means that only one Wi-Fi device can talk on a channel at a time. And when you look at an Ethernet cable, for an example, you know that an Ethernet cable is just a pair of twisted copper cables, right? And this allows traffic to go in two different directions at the exact same time. But Wi-Fi doesn't really work like that. Wi-Fi is more of like a single lane highway, right? Where traffic can only go in one direction at one time and then take turns going the other way. It's half duplex. Really important to understand that, especially when you have multiple devices on a network, right? So in this example, we have this client device here that's maybe having a conversation with the access point. Maybe someone's checking Facebook or streaming Netflix or something like that. Meanwhile, while that's happening, all these other devices on the network have to wait their turn to talk because only one device can talk on a channel at a time. So all these other devices are just waiting patiently. Really important to understand that. Wi-Fi is, there's only two bands that Wi-Fi currently operate on. There's the 2.4 gigahertz band and the 5 gigahertz band. And if you look at the 2.4 gigahertz band, if you look at the wavelength and measure this out, you find that the typical wavelength is about 5 inches. And what this means is it can go farther and it can pierce through walls a lot better. So it has a greater range. As a result, since everything tends to use the 2.4 gigahertz band, it's congested with Wi-Fi and non-Wi-Fi. A lot of non-Wi-Fi devices like cordless phones, baby monitors, even Xbox controllers, Bluetooth devices, things like that, they all use the 2.4 gigahertz band, so there's a lot of interference that occurs there. And alongside this, there's only 3 non-overlapping channels, right? 1, 6, and 11. Whereas the 5 gigahertz band, if you measure out the wavelength here, of the 5 gigahertz band, you'll find that it's about 2.5 inches. So because of this, it doesn't go as far, it doesn't pierce through walls as well, but there's a lot more space over here, right? There's 24 non-overlapping channels in the 5 gigahertz band. And not everything works with the 5 gigahertz band as well. The cheaper phones, cheaper laptops that want to save some money, save some space, sometimes they only have a 2.4 gigahertz only chipset in there, and the 5 gigahertz band will not work with these devices. So it's important to know what your clients are capable of as well. If they are capable of the 5 gigahertz band, then we always recommend providing a 5 gigahertz network and trying to put as much traffic on that band as possible. I won't go too much into detail here, but I do like to talk about the history of Wi-Fi. The most important thing here is 1997 and 99, we used a modulation scheme called DSSS, which stands for Direct Sequence Spread Spectrum. And what this looks like on a spectrum analyzer is kind of this, just a normal curved hill-shaped interference, right? It's about 22 megahertz wide, about 20 megahertz wide or so. And you'll see that on a spectrum analyzer. And if you see this, you know that we're using basic data rates. You'll note the network has resorted to these lower data rates, which oftentimes happen if a network is being overused. Whereas in 1999, we came up with OFDM, which stands for Orthogonal Frequency Division Multiplex. And what this looks like is more of a square kind of haystack shape here on a spectrum analyzer. And if you see this on a spectrum analyzer, and these can get up to 20, 40, 80, and 160 megahertz wide. So these can get pretty large. You know that OFDM is being used, and you know that you're unlocking these higher data rates with OFDM. And of course, 2019, 802.11ax, this will show up on a spectrum analyzer. It's going to look very similar to OFDM. It's basically the same modulation scheme. And yes, our Wi-Spy DBX and software will show that. I get that question quite a bit. So again, in the 2.4 gigahertz band, there's only 3 channels that don't overlap, at least in the United States. It's 1, 6, and 11. And so those are really the only 3 channels you should use in the 2.4 gigahertz band. A little bit about co-channel, adjacent channel interference, which, you know, this is a spectrum analysis, but since Wi-Fi uses RF, right, this is all on the spectrum. So we do prefer to, if you have to have a type of interference, co-channel's the way to go. Adjacent channel interference causes your devices to kind of yell and talk over each other, whereas with co-channel interference, they're a lot more polite. And what spectrum analysis is really great for is finding those non-Wi-Fi devices as well. Not only do you see, you know, how much a channel is being used, but you get to see these non-Wi-Fi interferers as well, which you wouldn't be able to catch with just the chipset in your laptop. Here's a pretty good example, real example of just a Wi-Fi scanner like inside our Chanalyzer. They have a Wi-Fi scanning capability, but until you plug in a Wi-Spy or some sort of spectrum analyzer, you get a much more clear picture. So you really wouldn't know what's going on with this screenshot. It looks like a normal, you know, Wi-Fi environment, got a couple networks on channels 1, 6, and 11, but you have no idea that there's actually, you know, this huge significant source of interference here. That's kind of bleeding into channel 11. And so any networks like this network right here, this SSID, would just suffer greatly. And you'd have no idea unless you had a Wi-Spy or some sort of spectrum analyzer taking a look at that. And then just a quick bit on Wi-Fi coverage. This is one of our most viewed articles. So we really strive for this negative 67 dBm signal strength. And so anything above this, right, negative 30, negative 40, negative 50, that means you're basically on top of the access point. Anything below that, you're going to start dropping some frames around negative 80 or so. You're going to start dropping some frames. Maybe your you know, YouTube stream starts to kind of haze up a little bit and maybe stop. And so to really combat that, we strive for this negative 67 dBm signal strength. It seems to be the sweet spot for reliable Wi-Fi. And so with that, I'll go ahead and hop into Chanalyzer and kind of do a quick demo for you guys and show you what this tool looks like, the deep dive into spectrum analysis. Actually, before that, I'll just get Chanalyzer fired up here in the background, and I guess before that, I'll kind of go over some points here as well. One thing you can do with Chanalyzer is locate sources of interference. We have a little directional antenna that you can plug into the Wi-Spy that comes with the bundle that Microcom sells. Yeah, it's just a standard directional antenna that kind of helps you directionally locate these sources of interference. You also get to, since there is a Wi-Fi scanner built into Chanalyzer, you can look for the Wi-Fi dead spots, look for that signal strength, that negative 67 dBm, make sure you're getting that throughout the environment. What's really cool about Chanalyzer is you can pause or rewind your spectrum data, right? It's a lot like a DVR. You know, so you can set the tool down for 3 to 4 or 5 hours, even, you know, up to 24 hours. Try and catch those intermittent sources of interference as well, and just go back and rewind or pause that data. Of course, we have a really neat report builder accessory that comes with Chanalyzer automatically, and you can build some really nice professional looking reports and hand it to the customer to prove that to prove that you fixed the problem, removed the interference, checked for signal strength, things like that. You can pretty much throw anything you want in this report and make you look very professional. And then lastly, we do have a Cisco Clean Air accessory that's an additional accessory that you can purchase. And this allows you to tap into the Cisco Clean Air spectrum analyzing capabilities that Cisco has to offer, those access points. So if you find yourself deploying Cisco access points, definitely recommend grabbing this Clean Air accessory as well. Because remember, Wi-Fi is half duplex, so even if you have a microwave operating, these Wi-Fi devices think that this microwave is a Wi-Fi device, and they politely take their turn to talk until your burrito's done cooking, right? So it's really important to have a spectrum analyzer to take a look at that type of thing. Here's some examples of some signatures. It's what a baby monitor looks like. These are really frustrating because they hop from channel to channel. This one started on 5, then it went to channel 9 here, and then it went up to channel 1. So deploying a Wi-Fi network around this would be super frustrating. Really important to have a spectrum analyzer that can kind of record like that. This is what Bluetooth looks like. This was a ton of Bluetooth devices in one room. And if you do have a ton of Bluetooth, or you're streaming a lot of, maybe you're transferring files back and forth, it can affect the Wi-Fi. Typically it doesn't, but if you have enough of it, it absolutely can affect your Wi-Fi. And this is what an old wireless video camera looked like. Fortunately, these aren't too much in the wild anymore because of the havoc they wreak, but that doesn't mean that even the Wi-Fi cameras, you know, it's still streaming video data, and video is obviously large and will cause a lot of oversaturation on the network as well. So even Wi-Fi cameras still are really heavy on the spectrum. So with that, I'll go ahead and open up Chanalyzer, which should have been running for a little bit now. And as you can see, I'm sweeping just the 2.4 gigahertz band, and I see some activity right now. If I wanted to sweep and use both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz band, I can just click the Wi-Fi menu at the top left here and click on dual band. So now the resources of my Wi-Fi DBX are being dedicated to both the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz band here. So it's going to take a little bit to populate some of this 2.4 gigahertz data. To switch back and forth, I can just click up at the top left here, and this provides the 5 gigahertz spectrum analysis. As you can see, I'm working from home. I'm working in my home office, so not a lot of activity here. If I go back to the 2.4 gigahertz band, I indeed can see some DSSS modulation schemes going on here, right? This is a perfect example. I'm happy that this is actually showing up for you guys to kind of have a good example of some real-time, real-life spectrum analysis and what these signatures look like. So if I go to the networks table here down at the bottom, I can start seeing all of these Wi-Fi networks around me, right? Personally, I'm using this Cathy-fied network on channel 11 and channel 48. And so if I place a check mark next to it, it will show up. We do have a really great filtering here with Chanalyzer. So if I wanted to get rid of everything else, I could just type in Cathy. And that'll just show my one SSID that I want to look at, which is my Cathy-fi Wi-Fi network. And so filtering works really great here too for channel, signal strength, security type, things like that. But I really just want to focus on my Cathy-fi network maybe at this point. So what's really cool too is if you go to the interferes tab on the left, you can actually start to drag and drop and kind of figure out what's going on here. So I'm going to drag this 802.11b activity, and sure enough, that's exactly what it is. This is the DSSS spectrum modulation scheme happening over here on the right-hand side, and you can kind of see it lines up. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to introduce some non-Wi-Fi interference and kind of show you what really is valuable about this tool. So I just plugged in a source of interference, and you're going to start seeing, I'm going to get my notation tool here. You're going to start seeing some activity start to occur here, and you can already see it happening on the spectrum, right? You can see something happening. And I'm going to go ahead and unplug this. Let's say this is intermittent. This just pops on for a minute, destroys everything on channel 1 and then it hops back off. I'm going to go ahead and remove this source of interference. What's really nice about Chanalyzer is it continues to record, and you can still see that on the waterfall menu, you still see what happened. Whereas, other spectrum analyzer tools that maybe just give you a snapshot, you might have missed it already, right? And so if I move my time sliders up to this point, I would have already missed it, right? I'm live and that interference is gone. But with Chanalyzer, you can go back and you can click and drag around this interference, and then you can kind of try and figure out what this is. So now that I've had my time selectors here right around that interference, I can really start to figure out, okay, well, what is this thing? And so this interference tab down here is really great for that, as you can drag it up. I believe what I'm using right here is a signal generator, and I believe it's supposed to mimic a Uniden phone signature, and so you can kind of see it matches up pretty well right there. But really easy to kind of troubleshoot what this is and kind of help identify what this might be. And I'm going to go ahead and plug it back in again, kind of representing that intermittent issue. And show you with that directional antenna. At this point, if you really couldn't figure out where this is, maybe you could, I'll kind of show you how to use that directional antenna capability. And so what basically all you have to do is just click and drag around the signature, click on the device finder option. You can kind of clean up your selection a little bit, make sure you get it exactly, and then hit the check mark. And then we enter device finder mode. And at this point, basically, you just rotate your directional antenna around until that blue gets up. So I'm going to move this a little bit farther away and show you what it looks like as it goes farther away. Red means you're getting, it's kind of like playing hot or cold, right? If the colder you are, the lower that blue bar is going to be in red, and the closer you get to it. So I'm going to kind of move it close to the Y-Spy here. That means you're getting closer to it. So with a directional antenna, that just makes this even easier to really locate, okay, where is this thing exactly? And so, pretty nice to have for these non-Wi-Fi interference. And as soon as you find it, you can remove the interference. I'm going to hop out of device finder mode here. Let's just say you found it, and at this point you unplug it, or whatever you have to do, if you can unplug it, of course. And then you can start building some reports for your customers to kind of prove that you did this right. And so maybe the first thing you want to do is you want to get a nice little sample report. I'm going to pull my networks table up here too. I'm going to get rid of my filter to show all my networks on channel 1, because there's not going to be any. This device knocked all the beacons off completely, right? So maybe I wanted to show that in reports. So if I go to report builder, click on new report, the first thing I want to maybe throw in here is the let's throw the density graph in. And so this density graph is going to show me the source of interference, right? What the spectrum looked like at that time. And what's really nice is we pre-fill this report with some literature. So I get blue, green, yellow, red, and it tells you, okay, red is over 50% utilized, yellow is 40, green is 20%, and blue is less than 10, right? So if I see some blue spectrum, it's kind of like a clap. Doesn't really interrupt our conversation, doesn't interrupt a Wi-Fi conversation. But if you start getting to red and you start seeing that yellow red spectrum, that's more like an air horn. That'd be like someone coming in my office and just blaring an air horn, right? I would have to start yelling to kind of get to you guys, and it would just be, pretty disruptive. So that's kind of what this means. And of course, you can add some custom notes here too. If you click the pencil icon, you can get rid of the stuff if you don't want it. You can add to it if you want. You can really customize these quite nicely. But let's say we removed this and I want to prove that. And so maybe I'm going to just select this this new clean spectrum since I've removed it. And at this point, I can go back to the report. Let's add another density graph with those parameters. And so now this is kind of at the bottom, right? This is after I fixed it. You can clean it up with some notes saying, hey, this is after. And maybe what you'd want to do too is maybe I'd want to throw a networks table here and prove that, okay, here's all these networks on channel 1 now, they seem to be functioning fine. And if I wanted to prove that these networks weren't there before, I can go back to that source of interference and go back to my report, and then I'm just going to add the exact same thing, right, the networks table. And this networks table with that interferer is just showing me nothing, right? All I really see is this Cathy-fied network on channel 11. And so pretty professional looking, right, if you needed to kind of prove to a customer what this looked like. And then you can save this as a PDF. You can save the report so you can go back and work on it later. You can even send it to other people and they can open up in their instance of Chanalyzer and then work on it some more, things like that. But I'm just going to close out of this and not save it. Of course, I wanted to show you the Clean Air accessory menu here. If you just go to Clean Air and connect to a Clean Air AP, I don't have anything set up in my current environment. I don't think we have one even set up quite yet at the MetaGeek office. But all you need is the IP address and the NSI key for that, and you can start tapping in remotely and view some spectrum that way. There's a ton of other features here that I definitely recommend checking out. We do have a trial of Chanalyzer, but keep in mind you do have to have a Wi-Fi DBX or some sort of Wi-Fi spectrum analyzer to really utilize this to its fullest capabilities. But there's a ton of other features that I recommend going through. Of course, besides Wi-Fi channels, we do show Zigbee stuff as well. So in this instance, I'm looking at Zigbee channels. If you guys work in a lot of the custom home or smart automation stuff like that, it's really nice to have those overlaid across here. Of course, you can also just look at the frequency as well. So if I want to just look at frequencies as opposed to Wi-Fi channels, I can see exactly what frequencies these are working in as well. Again, there's a lot of other features here. I definitely recommend getting a trial version of this and playing around with some of the recordings at the very least if you don't have a Wi-Fi. And so keep in mind, this is a desktop application, works on Windows, Windows only. And so if you do have an iPhone or an iPad or an Android device, then you might want to take a look at our Wi-Fi Air product. The Air Viewer application, which again is available on the App Store or the Google Play Store. And so this really is a pretty neat tool that we're pretty excited about. It's a lot like Chanalyzer. It does give you a real-time network overview. It has a Wi-Fi chipset built into it, so you can do the Wi-Fi scanning that circumvent the hardware restrictions that Apple and Google place on their mobile devices, right? You can't really use their own chipset. They are very, careful about who can use that and for what. And so we circumvent that. Along that, we also have a spectrum analyzer, and that works really great, actually. A really great spectrum analyzer, and then a one-by-one packet capture adapter, so we can see client roaming and client traffic analytics as well. So it's kind of a 3-in-1 device, all on your mobile, which is pretty cool. So we got layer 1 and layer 2. Again, this connected client perspective is pretty neat. This example here, you can see this client roamed from an access point on channel 118 to an access point on channel 153, and then it steered over to the 2.4 gigahertz band on that same AP. Really cool to be able to see this stuff, and especially on a mobile device. I don't really know anything like it that can do this type of thing. And now we actually we have snapshots enabled in here as well. So this is a work in progress. We released Wi-Fi Air in back in April, and because it is an App Store app, we can just continuously add more features and developments to it. So any feedback you guys have, let us know. Let Microcom know, and we'd be happy to work on that a little bit more. And so with snapshots, you can actually send a snapshot of your network environment, which basically gets you signal strength and utilization, a few other things, network topology, and then you can go back to your account, your my.metageek.com account, and view those snapshots. And so with that, I'll go ahead and get I do have a demo unit here, so I'm going to go ahead and see if I can connect up to it and show you a quick demo of this tool. It's pretty neat. So it works on, like I said, iOS. It works on iPhones, and I have an iPad here, and it looks really nice on an iPad. So I'm going to jump into the Air Viewer application and plug in the Wi-Fi Air and kind of show you what it has to offer a little bit. So the first thing, it's a real-time network scanner. So the first thing you can see is I have this, it shows you what I'm connected to with this little chain link icon. So one thing it will look into is it will look at the adapter to see, okay, which radio are you connected to? So if I click on my Cathy-Fi network and dive into it, what's really neat is that it'll show me which radio I'm actually connected to. This is super handy because, of course, if you have an iPhone or an Android device, you know that you don't know which AP or which radio you're connected to. So with this tool, you can see, so right now I can see, okay, cool, I'm on my 5 gigahertz band here. That's really important for me to know because I don't want this device to be steering over to the channel 11 when I'm so close to the access point. So it will take a look at the chipset and say, okay, which radio am I connected to? Right now I'm getting a signal strength over time. So if I were to, I'm a little bit tethered to my desk, but if I were to walk away from my access point you would see the signal strength of this kind of go down, and then you'd see it come back up if I get closer to the access point. And so it's really nice to have this real-time overview. I have currently right now, it can see my, I have one access point that's broadcasting on channel 42 and 11 right here and right here. And then I have an access point out in the back that's broadcasting on channel 11. And it also has a 5 gigahertz radio out there, but there's too many walls in between us. So it's getting attenuated by those walls. So it's not seeing those right now. What's really cool is I have this clients section as well. So not only can I see the signal strength of my access points over time, but I can look and see any clients that are on the network as well. And this is really neat when you consider that this is on an, this could be on my iPhone or an Android device. So let's see here. It looks like I have a few clients here. It's also showing me the signal strength, so I can almost track clients. This one's interesting to me. It looks like I have a client on channel 11. Let's dive into that and see what's going on there. And so you can kind of get, retry rate and get your utilization. Of course, you get your signal strength, and you can look at the roaming history. So if this client device were to steer back to that 5 gigahertz band, I would see I would see that happen here, right? A little roaming history log, which I think is pretty neat. So if I go back here, let's see if we have any other interesting vendors. So this client device is on my 5 gigahertz band. So that's kind of what I would expect it to be. Pretty soon we are going to be able to alias these. Right now we just get the MAC address of the client, so I'm not entirely sure what it is quite yet, but aliasing is coming very, very soon here with this application. And so with that, you get a pretty good ability to track and monitor client utilization, which is pretty neat. If I hop over to the channels view here, kind of at the bottom right, this kind of now, instead of showing me the SSIDs and all the networks first, it's kind of just breaking it down per channel. And if I really want to focus on spectrum analysis, I'm going to turn my networks off just to dedicate most of my resources to the spectrum analyzer that's on board here. And so I'm going to give it some time to kind of focus on that now that I turn the networks off, right? Because it does have to kind of toggle between the two capabilities. When it's scanning, it's not able to utilize the spectrum resources. You're going to have to play a little bit with that, but as soon as you start getting some data, it really starts populating quite nicely. So you can already see this DSS spectrum, same in Chanalyzer, right? I have some Wi-Fi activity over here, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce that same source of interference, right, that non-Wi-Fi interference. And you can just see as soon as I plug that in, you just see the spectrum immediately start to appear. I've been very, very pleased with the responsiveness of these spectrum analyzers. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug it, and you'll just see how quickly that disappears as well. So very fast. They're honestly, in my opinion, they almost seem to be slightly faster than the Wi-Fi DBX in terms of pure spectrum analysis, which I think is pretty awesome. I really enjoy that. You can toggle channels off or on. So right now I'm looking at just the 1 through 11, and I'm looking at 36 through 48 and 50 through to 64. Since there's not as much screen real estate, we have to kind of break them up separately like this. But if you know that you're using some or not of some other ones, you can actually go back and change that here in the settings. And you can toggle those on or off. So maybe if you are outside the US, you can toggle on 12 through 14. I have DFS toggled off, but maybe if I wanted to take a look at DFS channels, I could toggle that on and then go back to my channels view. And now I can take a look at those DFS channels, see if there's anything interesting going on in the spectrum there. Of course, there's a lot of other settings here. If you do go into the settings, you can also edit the sweep settings and how often you want it to perform a Wi-Fi scan. And then, of course, we do have a new snapshot capability, so you can actually add sites. So if you go to customer sites often, you can add that site. You can go into each room and basically do a check. So this could be really handy for internet service providers as well, who need to kind of verify coverage throughout an establishment and send that back up to someone else to analyze or take screenshots of or what have you to kind of prove that that area has sufficient coverage. So something to look for as well. And so with that, that's pretty much the entire tool. These are the main tools that MetaGeek have to offer in terms of spectrum analyzers. Of course, in the Wi-Fi world, you need to have more than spectrum analysis. You need to have some Wi-Fi scanning as well. But yeah, this is pretty much where we're at MetaGeek. We're really excited about this new application, the Air Viewer with the Wi-Fi Air, and Microcom is selling this as well. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm done with that. And so I'll go ahead and open up the floor up, give the floor back to Julie, and answer any questions that you guys might have.
Casey, thank you very much for that wonderful presentation. We all enjoyed it. And yes, I do have some questions for you. Let's go ahead and get started with the first one. First, a comment, wanted to let you know that Microcom does, let's see here, let me make sure I've got this correct. Microcom offers 3-day training preps for CWNA, and one of our sales integration managers mentioned this and would perhaps love to get in touch with you to discuss bulk options for your team.
Oh,
so
wow.
we are involved with that. So wanted to
Very
let
cool.
you know. And then I'm gonna okay, excellent. I can put you in touch with him or vice versa.
Awesome.
And then in addition to that, first question here regarding your products. We know you're in Boise. Can you tell us where your products are manufactured?
Yeah, right here in Boise, actually, it's
Oh, okay.
a suburb called Nampa is specifically where the hardware manufacture occurs. But yeah, we're very proud of that. It's all locally sourced. So, yep.
Excellent. So you don't have to ship it in from parts far away.
Right.
Fantastic.
Yep.
Fantastic. Casey, can you tell us what is a typical household item that many people may not realize interfere with the network? I know you've mentioned, baby monitors and other things. Is there anything else that we could be aware of that maybe most people don't realize?
Yeah, I mean, it depends too. Kind of back a few years ago, there was a lot more cordless phones out there that in the wild. So a lot of people still maybe use cordless phones. The cell phone kind of eliminated that need, but certainly doesn't mean that there aren't people with cordless phones out there that operate in the 2.4 gigahertz band, and those are actually crazy loud talkers. HVAC equipment. Anything that is large industrial equipment like even an air conditioning unit can leak RF in the 2.4. Of course, microwaves. There's a lot more than you'd think. Even in Idaho here, Idaho Power uses a wireless meter kind of check thing, and that actually spews out tons of RF, surprising amount of RF, so that they can kind of wirelessly view your usage. That's another thing that interferes with Wi-Fi that usually is in the 2.4 gigahertz band. So even walkie-talkies, things like that. A lot of it's kind of dated equipment, but it's still being used. And even if you're by an airport, there's a lot of high noise floor in the 2.4 gigahertz band that can cause some issues with Wi-Fi as well. So you really don't know until you get a spectrum analyzer, because I've been surprised to find all the things that do leak RF. Even if they aren't intentionally wireless devices, they still leak RF just by operating. And so, yeah, there quite a few things, definitely.
Excellent, Casey. Thank you for that. And yeah, there are a lot more than one would think. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
absolutely.
Thank you. Next question here for you. Does MetaGeek have any training videos on how to read all the different charts? I mean, the data is great, but sometimes it's a little intimidating and might need some instruction on what to actually read and understand what one is looking at.
Yeah, I would go to support.metageek.com. That's kind of our knowledge base with, we have articles, and we have a couple videos there. I can't recall off the top of my head if we have many videos. We have a couple regarding Chanalyzer specifically, and kind of how to read some of the details in Chanalyzer. But I know we have some articles and some kind of how-to guides and things like that will help you. And then check out our YouTube channel as well. Just MetaGeek, I think I think it's youtube.com/MetaGeeks with an S at the end of it is our official channel. I think someone took the MetaGeek one before we did. So we have some videos there too that should have some information on that as well.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Casey. Next question here for you. Are there any subscriptions for the Chanalyzer, or are there future features that we could pay for to use it?
Yeah, right now it's not on a subscription. It's a one-time cost, but we do have what's called Medicare renewal, and you can get those Medicare extensions through Microcom as well. And that just pays for any updates released after your first year ends. So when you buy Chanalyzer, you get a year of Medicare free. But to get any updates after that first year, you would have to extend your Medicare, is what we call it. You don't have to, but again, that's just if you want to get updates. You can still use the older version. And those Medicare extensions are sold through Microcom, or you can also go through MetaGeek, whatever you prefer.
Excellent. Thank you, Casey. A couple more questions here for you. Will spectrum analysis with MetaGeek work outdoors as well as indoors?
Definitely. Yeah. In fact, I'm working on a video right now where I go on a hike over here in Boise, and there's a huge noise floor on the hike, and I'm tracking it with Wi-Fi Air and an iPad. And so, yeah, it works great outdoors, and it's kind of fun actually to see what's going on the 2.4, and usually it's the 2.4 gigahertz band that, there's always something happening. But in this particular hike, there ended up being a couple WISPs, wireless internet service providers, just beaming from antennas at the top of this mountain, and I could track it exactly with Wi-Fi Air. So yeah, it works great with that stuff too. I mean, we're not just, it's not just a 802.11 or Wi-Fi protocol analyzer. We have spectrum analyzers in there as well, so non-Wi-Fi or what have you. So if it's happening outside, yeah, it's kind of fun to get our devices out there, especially Wi-Fi Air, since it's so mobile. You can just plug it into your phone real quick and walk around and check out the spectrum.
Excellent. Thank you, Casey. Last question here for you. Regarding the app, would there be an app for iOS and Android that is free to use? Is it free?
Yeah, AirViewer is free. You just need the hardware, of course, the one-time cost on the hardware, the Wi-Fi Air. Yeah, AirViewer is free, but you do need to have the hardware. Right now, we don't have an application, and no one else really does either when it comes to iOS in terms of Wi-Fi scanning, because Apple really restricts the hardware quite a bit. So they don't really let you have an application that uses the internal hardware resources. So you have to circumvent it with some sort of external hardware, which is where the Wi-Fi Air comes in. So.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Casey. And thank you, everyone, for being with us today, and for Casey answering all those questions for us. If anyone has any further questions, of course, please feel free to contact your sales rep or email us at sales@microcomtech.com. And if anyone wishes to view any of the products mentioned or shown here today, please visit us at www.microcom.us. And remember, this webinar presentation has been recorded, so and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel, so you can view it again. Casey, appreciate your time and all of your information you've shared with us today. Everybody, have a fantastic day.
Thanks, Julie. Take care.
You're welcome.